Good morning. Welcome to the Children's Museum of Atlanta's Town Square. This is a virtual series for families, educators, and our community to learn about and discuss important issues and challenges that are weighing on so many right now. The Children's Museum of Atlanta serves as a town square for families with young children. And we're a gathering place where all are invited to explore, engage, and learn in the way that children learn best through play. We've been hosting these town squares since July. So if you missed any past sessions, they've all been recorded and they can be found on our blog, which you can access through our website at childrensmuseumatlanta.org. During this presentation, if you think of questions you would like to ask our visitors, please just enter them as a comment and we will get to as many as we possibly can. This month, as we're headed into the holiday season, we're hearing from our families that there's a lot of stress and even grieving at the forced absence of longstanding traditions. This pandemic has obviously impacted all of us, and there are increasing issues around mental health that are only going to increase really through the holidays. So as we look ahead to Thanksgiving right around the corner, Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, and New Year's Eve, we're just hearing about a lot of stress with families. So last week we heard from the very recently passed American Medical Association President, Dr. Patrice Harris, which was wonderful kickoff to this whole topic. And today I am really honored to introduce two amazing professionals who work locally with an organization called CRIS 180. CRIS 180 is a beloved and highly regarded institution in Atlanta, which has been really at the forefront of behavioral health and child welfare issues since it started in 1981. They're expanding their reach and depth of services really as the need surfaces, but they really help children, young adults, and families through mental health counseling at their main center and other centers at schools. And they also work with in group homes that they manage for children who are sometimes in foster care. So their focus is really to fill significant gaps in childcare. And in addition to working with young children, they also include homeless young adults who have aged out of foster care system, but still need help in transitioning to adulthood. Today, I'm really happy to welcome Josee Muldrew and Gabrielle Parker to our town square, who both work with CRIS 180. Just a little bit about each of them. Josee is a licensed associate professional counselor and school-based therapist at Price Middle School. She earned her master's degree in clinical mental health counseling and behavioral medicine from Boston University School of Medicine, and also has a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Spelman College here in Atlanta. She believes that she has been privileged to have worked in various settings, including inpatient, outpatient, residential, forensic facilities, and school-based environments. She is passionate about working with underrepresented and disenfranchised groups to help them build resiliency and develop a sense of empowerment. Gabrielle Parker is a therapist at CRIS 180's Adamsville location with Fulton County Behavioral Health. She works with children, adolescents, and their families who may be experiencing mental health challenges, family issues, stress, or trauma. These are two wonderful people in our community who are really working hands-on with so many families. I just say good morning to both of you. I would just love to I'll start with Josee, but ask you each to just share a little bit about yourselves and why you thought it was important to participate in today's session. So Josee, why don't you kick us off?
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you, Jane, and just Children's Museum of Atlanta for having us. I felt like it was really important to be here today. Just as Jane mentioned, there's such a peak in everything that's going on right now with COVID, with mental health issues that we're seeing surface. And so it's really important to just be able to create spaces like this to talk about what's going on, to get skills, different strategies, not only from us as mental health professionals, but I think just to talk about it in the larger space of what families are experiencing, just to provide support and let you know that you're not alone during this time.
Thank you. Gabrielle.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, so I think that this has been such a unique year for all of us and has just kind of presented new challenges that we didn't expect. So I love the idea of this Town Square series to kind of open dialogue for families who are experiencing a unique set of challenges that they did not expect to. And just to provide support, to provide resources, to provide tips and tools to have a successful and healthy family. So thank you so much.
Oh, great. So we'll just keep going back and forth between the two of you because you each have a very important perspective. But as we're looking ahead at the holidays and families experiencing just increasing stress since March. I mean, it just feels like sometimes it feels like there's no end in sight. Just wondered what you've been seeing with the families that you're working with, even since mid-March, and then we can talk about how it's manifesting itself as we look ahead to the holidays. So Josee, you want to?
Yeah. So I primarily work with middle school age children and their families. And so a lot of what I've been seeing is just an increase in like the anxiety symptoms. Some of the children may be showing, but also the parents. I think a lot of what parents are considering like acting out. So seeing a peak in behavioral issues with the kids, whether it be like temper tantrums or crying or refusing to like comply with requests, things like that. So a lot of behavioral issues. I would definitely say some like isolation and withdrawing. I think kids feel very disconnected during this time because even though we have virtual outlets, you know, a lot of times it's just not the same as like being in person and occupying space with another human. And so I think, you know, you see some kids withdrawing, kind of keeping to themselves, and maybe even showing some depressive symptoms. And so kind of working with families to manage that, as well as supporting parents and trying to balance, you know, working and then also having their kids at home full time for school and how they can kind of manage that and create different structures to not only support their kids' emotional needs, but also themselves. Because I think parents are going through a lot during this time too.
Mm-hmm. Gabrielle, how about you? What are you seeing?
Very, very similar to Josee. I work with children, young adults, and families ages 4 to 24. And I think noticing a really large increase in kids just feeling very lonely, feeling very isolated, high stress, high anxiety. They're not getting the same social interactions that they would have by, you know, attending school. And so that's leaving them with a lot of negative emotions. And then for parents, they've kind of been navigating, you know, having to work, having to be a parent, having to be a teacher, having to be all of these different roles for months now. And it's starting to feel, you know, or it's been feeling really, really intense kind of burnout, which is kind of, you know, getting yourself into a cycle of just really, really struggling. So I'm noticing that, you know, parents are having a really hard time, kids are having a hard time. And also a lot of kind of grief has come up, especially heading towards the holidays. Things are going to look drastically different for a lot of individuals, just not being able to see certain family members that they were used to seeing. And that kind of brings up some hard emotions and some painful times of just what's that going to look like for us, and kind of a new thing that parents are having to navigate and how to have those conversations with kids.
So that really is, so in terms of acting out, and in some ways, sometimes I feel like I act out. You know, we're all under stress, but children really don't have the maturity to really have the perspective. How can the adult caregivers in their lives really recognize that this is, you know, acting out is a response to a stress, and how they can recognize that, and maybe some tools that you would recommend for them, you know, how to manage these times to help their kids, which I think would ultimately help them as well.
Sure. Okay. Go ahead, Gabby.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I think that a really, really big key is modeling and as a parent, modeling, kind of embedding healthy coping skills into everyday life. And that can be just practicing some deep breathing, listening to any mindfulness or meditation. There's lots of great apps that you can utilize, but kind of making that into a routine for families. If the parents are modeling it, the kids are going to follow that. They are looking to the parents. And also, you know, creating schedules and routines. Repetition is a super important skill that children are learning, and children often, you know, notice routines more in their absence than in their presence. So kind of building that routines and rituals into day to day as a way to kind of manage some of those, you know, increase in behavioral issues, and also kind of validating for the kids, like, this has been a really tough year for mom, for dad, for grandma, and it's for you. And I see that, and I see that you're struggling. And I kind of am too. So let's talk about it and open up a dialogue and have kind of conversations as a family to kind of validate and recognize that, yeah, we might be experiencing some of these really tough times together as a family.
So Gabby, so Josee, when there is this communication, which it seems like is a really important way to engage with children, to help them voice their own feelings, where do you take it once everyone has voiced that I'm frustrated, I'm sad, I'm angry? How do you then take that and turn it into something that empowers a positive action for families?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think a lot of what Gabrielle said was so beautiful. I think the beauty is in kind of like sharing the experience that like we're both going through this simultaneously. So like after you're validating the child, because a lot of times I think sometimes we can act out of like overwhelm. So we experience the child like acting out as like oppositional or like defiant. Really, there's just like a need that's not being met. And so it's like when you can kind of, like you said, talk about it, name that you're frustrated, name that we're struggling, kind of joining in that emotion together. And then in order to like, you know, empower the child or like take some sort of action, I think what's really good is to be able to give the child like that voice and choice in a situation. So not kind of dictating what they should do to kind of overcome this feeling, but saying like, hey, what do you think would help you feel better in this moment? Like what's something that we can do to kind of get through this together, to kind of calm whatever we're experiencing right now. And I think it gives the child like a sense of just like responsibility and agency. And it shows that like, okay, you're hearing me, and like you're also giving me the power to choose how I now navigate this. And a lot of times it's like really small things. Like it can be as simple as like Gabrielle said, like the deep breathing, like stepping outside for fresh air. Like sometimes I think we think coping skills have to be you know, such a large like set of things you do, and really it can be just something so small, just kind of choosing to do it together, I think can help.
So that's a really good point. And, you know, that's something, again, it isn't even just young children. We all can really use these coping skills. One of the things that we're experiencing and we're hearing again from our families is that there just seems to be this moving goalpost, as you put it, which is when we closed the museum in March, we thought, well, worst case, we'll be back in normal world by September, worst case. So now we're not sure what lies ahead. And I'm wondering how children cope with that. and maybe even cast blame on parents sometimes, because that's just what children do. But again, how parents can address even that, because that's anxiety producing for everybody. Gabby, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. I think, having open conversations about kind of that there is such a sense of uncertainty, developmentally appropriate conversations depending on the age of the child about, what COVID is and what it looks like and why, things keep on getting pushed back and we just really don't know, to kind of, take some of the blame off of, if, the kids are feeling any sort of blame towards the parent about this, to kind of remove, like, this is something that we all really don't know. And that when we don't know things and there's a lot of uncertainty, that can increase our stress levels and that can increase our anxiety. So let's talk about that. And let's, put things into our schedule to help reduce that and to help manage some of those stress and anxiety. Because for a lot of, we just don't know, we don't have an answer. And, I think it's okay to say that.
Yeah, I agree with that, Gabby. I think a lot of times too, we might feel pressure as like caregivers that we have to like give so much information at once or like know the answer. But I think, just giving yourself permission to like not know and being really honest in the conversation that this is something that none of us know the answer to, and we're all kind of trying to figure it out, and only answering like what the child wants to know, because sometimes it can be information overload for them too. I think when we're just trying to give too many answers. So really, just being specific about what you share, and then also maybe using different like metaphors, like if you're thinking about the child's like developmental stage or like their temperament, how they like receive information and process it, trying to compare it. And it's hard during these times, but like thinking about kids who like to play video games, who might be in different situations where like they might be in a game and they experience things where like something goes wrong and it prolongs how long they have to play to like get to a certain goal, like kind of using different metaphors to compare like this idea of things continuing to like come up and kind of prolonging, our time to actually transition back into normalcy. So that's something that I've like tried to use with some of my kids, and it's been somewhat helpful.
Great. Has there been anything like that stands out that really, really helped a family who was undergoing this? And I don't know if there is a specific example, but given that you're working with families, and this must be a common theme, I'm guessing, if there's been anything in particular that's really stood out as a successful.
I think one thing that has been, and this has been with numerous families, is the idea of setting up family meetings. And it's kind of a time that you have once a week, and it doesn't have to be a huge time commitment. It can be, 20, 30 minutes on a Sunday evening when everyone's at home. But just this is a space and a time for everyone in the family to come together, to meet, and to have questions. And we might not have all the answers to those questions that you have, but this is the space to ask those questions, to talk about those feelings, so that it's put into a routine. It's an open, safe space that you kind of are setting that this is what we're going to do as a family. And, I have questions too, and I'm going to bring some questions as well as the caregiver. I want you to come with questions you might have about what's going on, and kind of, facilitating that conversation so that it's an expectation and something that you build into the routine has been something that's been, I've seen to be really helpful. And also kind of a good bonding experience as well, to have that, that designated time to kind of explore any of the stuff that's been going on, in the larger year or just even in the past week.
Yeah, I like that. I think same with me in terms of just like designating family time, and even seeing like for social connectedness for children with their peers. So like scheduling like virtual play dates, like whether it be through like Zoom or like FaceTime. Like some parents are okay with, some kids coming into the home, just keeping it in small numbers. So even if it's like an arrangement with that between parents where like peers can come together, and that will be a time of like, having some human interaction and then maybe also accomplishing goals. So it's like maybe you can work on homework together and then play a game afterwards. But just things like that to kind of still keep some level of connectedness during this time.
So that's really interesting, because it seems that a lot of school systems have Wednesdays as sort of an off day, a study day, and maybe that's a time when kids could get together more informally, even over schoolwork. So there's Zoom. Everybody's Zooming all the time. There's Zooming in classes. There's Zooming. The other thing I wanted to ask about was if you have seen or heard of an increase in really cyberbullying, because bullying is a problem just in general, and just wondered if in fact that is happening online, or if you feel like it's being managed by. Josee, you want to?
Yeah, something that I've definitely seen an increase in, just working within the school system. I think, like you said, we're using Zoom for so many things, and I think because there's so much time spent in technology and just on the phones, it's natural that you kind of can see this peak in the cyberbullying. So whether it's during class time, where people are making comments in the chat box towards other students, whether it's just through the different social media platforms of like Instagram, TikTok, all those things. And I think it becomes really hard for children to manage, especially now sometimes, because you already feel very isolated and lonely, and you don't have maybe the peer support of loved ones who would really kind of support you during this time. And so I think experiencing cyberbullying right now can be, even more difficult. I think how I've been seeing it managed is, really just being like transparent about it on a school level and having like the school address it, but also working with parents to make sure that they're really kind of monitoring what their child is doing when they are online. So monitoring those things, maybe even limiting screen time. So like giving a structure to your own child about how long you're allowing them to kind of engage in these different social media platforms. So that way, they're not being as exposed to the cyberbullying, and they're also not having as much of an opportunity to perpetrate it if that is the situation.
So given that this is about, the holidays, and we definitely want to have some time in just a few minutes to look at the resources that you have brought to share so that families can access those. Just as sort of, again, looking at the holiday, any ideas or thoughts you have about how a family in this time can, very specifically plan for a happy holiday, even though it's different? Gabby, do you want to?
Yeah, I think, having those conversations now and, early, and asking family members like, well, what are some of your, favorite traditions that we have? And if it's something that might look a little different, kind of having like a collaborative conversation about how we can make that happen or something similar happen. So if, baking cookies with grandma is something that the kid really, really looks forward to, and that can't happen, maybe you make cookies at home and you're able to drop them off, or you do it via Zoom, or FaceTime with grandma participating, but trying to replicate it in some way so that they can still have those experiences, even if it won't look identical to how they're used to. And then also offering an opportunity to create brand new traditions, and kind of using the kid's voice and things that they might want to do that are feasible, and allowing them to kind of, speak up and decide on maybe a new tradition that you had never thought of.
Right. Josee, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love those. Similar to that, like she said, I think really just making sure you're like creating new traditions and finding new ways of kind of like reinventing old ones. So something I've talked about with some of my families is even this idea of, you know, when you're doing like a virtual Zoom to like celebrate the Thanksgiving, doing like Thanksgiving like resolution. So talking about like what you're looking forward to in the next holidays, and also being able to like go around and share what you're grateful for, just to pull out kind of, even though this is a time of uncertainty and so much has been going on, like there are still things that we can be grateful for during this time. I think doing like the activities of like cooking together, those things, and for those who might be like mourning loved ones during this time who have lost, you know, different people in their lives, even creating like memory boxes together, like lighting a candle in honor of them, just different traditions you can kind of create to make sure that everyone feels a sense of just like some level of joy during the holidays.
I love that. So I just would love to bring up the, I know you guys prepared a slide, if you will, of resources, and we're going to bring those up and ask you to just point out some of those. So I guess just take turns, or however you want to talk about these.
You want me to? Okay.
So yeah, the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, they specifically have a lot of really great tip sheets and resources specific to COVID. And they've done a really great job of really highlighting some of the issues that, you know, parents are having. And I believe that they also kind of do it into age categories as well. So that's also really helpful. So this is a really great resource to kind of peruse if you have the time.
Yes, and then similar with Mental Health America, I think they've been providing just a lot of content and supports around COVID. So ideas for different coping strategies, ways that parents can kind of manage, as well as different kind of tips and tricks related to creating like routines and structure in your life. So another good resource to reference. This is, sorry, go ahead.
So you go ahead.
Okay. This is the Center for the Study of Traumatic Stress. And this is another resource that just has a lot of good information about specifically focusing on children who are homebound during this time. So, you know, having to spend more time at home, less at school, and how to kind of manage that right now, and different skills that the parents can kind of put in place to help the children cope during this time.
So the first link is a book. This is a reading of it on YouTube. It's a really, really great story that you can use in a lot of different ways. It's called The Invisible String. It's kind of about remaining connected, even if you can't be physically together. I think it can be super applicable to not being with family members, also with loss. It's a really, really beautiful story that you can, you know, buy on Amazon or watch the YouTube video as well of the read aloud.
And then A Safe Circle for Little You, also a read aloud story that's on YouTube, or that you could also purchase through Amazon. And it's another resource to kind of just help in joining together and establishing safety during a time like this.
And I think both of those stories in particular would be really great conversation starters for families to read together, and then kind of have a conversation about how they might be feeling about, you know, not seeing family members for the holidays, or, you know, not being with family members that they may have lost.
Well, these are great. And I just want to thank you for, I know you both are so busy, but I want to thank you for really for the work you're doing in our community, not only as individuals, but that Chris 180 does for families throughout our community. And I just wish you all the best, although different kind of Thanksgiving and holiday season. And we look forward to more conversations and partnerships. So thank you so much.
Thank you.